Namaste and good evening. Thank you for joining us today for our launch event for our Save Pakistan Stolen Girls initiative. I'm Deepali Kulkarni, the Director of Human Rights at the Hindu American Foundation, HAF, an educational and advocacy nonprofit organization. HAF educates the public about Hindus and Hinduism and advocates for policies and practices that ensure the well-being of all people. Please do engage with us on social media. You can find us through the handle @HinduAmerican. Since its inception in 2003, HAF has made human rights advocacy one of its main priorities and is the only Hindu American organization to publish an annual human rights report comprehensively detailing human rights violations against Hindus globally, including the systematic abductions and forced conversions of Hindu girls in Pakistan. The foundation has regularly hosted U.S. congressional briefings, submitted on-the-record testimony to several congressional hearings, actively engaged with think tanks in Washington, D.C., spearheaded advocacy campaigns, and conducted on-the-ground fact-finding missions to highlight the plight of Hindus and other minority girls in Pakistan. Tonight, we're continuing this work with the introduction of the Save Pakistan Stolen Girls initiative, which includes an awareness and advocacy campaign devoted to the stolen Hindu and other minority girls of Pakistan. There's lots of exciting things in store for us during our program this evening, including a conversation with Dod Khatak, a journalist who investigated this issue earlier this year, and Rubina Greenwood, a long-time advocate for the Hindus of Sindh, Pakistan. We'll also come together to take some first steps to put an end to these grave human rights violations. Let me briefly introduce what exactly we're facing here and what the Save Pakistan Stolen Girls initiative attempts to raise awareness about and advocates to put an end to. The systematic abductions and forced conversions of young Hindu, Christian, and Sikh girls haunt minority communities in Pakistan on a daily basis. According to experts, more than 1,000 Hindu and Christian girls across the country are stolen from their families annually. This means that since 2011, at least 10,000 girls have been abducted. In the chat, you'll find a story from BBC detailing one story of a Christian girl who was just 12 years old and was shackled by her captors. The commonplace violence against abducted Hindu and Christian girls and women is typically at least fivefold and includes abduction from homes or public spaces, forced conversion, usually certified by a mosque, forced marriage, usually sanctioned by a judge, rape, forced separation from family, either while being held captive by their abductors or while held in shelter homes by the state while their legal case is in process. This child trafficking is made possible because once abducted, forcefully converted, and forced to marry, the girls are taken to a local court by their abductors, where a judge usually sanctions the legality of the marriage and conversion, thus legitimizing their abduction. The nature of the violence in these incidents is intersectional and simultaneously involves violence against women, violence against children, and violence against minority communities. Yet, the intentional description of this violence as a voluntary conversion by the clerics, judges, and government officials in Pakistan misidentifies this violence as a mental process of choosing religious belief, rather than the physical and psychological traumas of abduction, forced marriage, rape, death threats, forced isolation, being kept from one's family, and much more. RFERL, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, has created a report detailing the abductions and the justifications that the perpetrators provide for this violence. Let's now watch an excerpt from this report before we hear from a journalist that was involved in its creation, Dod Khatak.
Each year, hundreds of Hindu girls in Pakistan are allegedly forced to convert. They're quickly married off to Muslim men, and ties to their families are cut. RFERL questions the clerics behind the conversions that human rights groups say are often coerced. And we look at why Pakistani lawmakers haven't protected minors and ensured that religious conversions are not forced.
There's no clarity. It shouldn't be an informal group of clerics, for instance, doing this. It should be the state doing this.
The Dargah Barchundi Sharif Religious Seminary in Pakistan's Sindh province is one of 3 major hubs for converting religious minorities to Islam. It was here that a Hindu girl, Simran Kumari, was found after disappearing from her aunt's house on August 17, 2020.
थाने पे पहुंचा भी नहीं हूं कि उसकी कॉल आई है कि आपकी लड़की हमारे यहाँ है, वो कहती है कि मैं इस्लाम कबूल करना चाहती हूं.
Simran's brother, Sunny Kumar, is still trying to make sense of it all. He believes his sister, who he says suffers from psychological problems and impaired vision, was abducted and forced to convert. He says she was just 17 years old. Simran's family took this video when they were permitted to see her, but they could not meet her privately, and she was guarded by seminary officials.
हम उसको समझाएंगे हमारे साथ रहकर तो देखे वो उधर हम गए थे वो फुल प्रेशर में थी डर रही थी अभी आप उसकी वीडियो देखें और वो लोग उसको इशारे दे रहे थे.
When the family returned home, they received a video message. Simran had a new Islamic name, Aisha, and a Muslim husband.
देखो ना हमें जो हम वापसी आ गए थे फिर 1-2 घंटों के बाद उन्होंने वीडियो शो कर दी कि ये मुसलमान हो गई है इसका निकाह भी हो गया है 2 घंटों में.
अपने वर्षा के लिए अपने पिछड़ों के लिए आप क्या पैगाम देना चाहती हैं?
मैं उन्हें ये कहना चाहती हूँ मुझे तंग ना करें मैं इनके साथ खुश रहना चाहती हूँ मुझे खुश रहने दें.
The next morning, a judge issued a court order protecting Simran from her Hindu family, legally blocking them from getting her back. Police refused to investigate the case. Only 10 days earlier, there was laughter as Simran gave her brothers customary friendship bracelets, or rakis. But within a day, she was gone. The family was powerless.
बस ऐसे समझो ज़मीन फट जाए हम उधर चले जाएं. आप यकीन नहीं करोगे बस हम जहर लेने पे तुले थे.
The dizzying speed of Simran's disappearance, conversion, and marriage follows a disturbing pattern, according to Pakistani human rights groups. Reports estimate as many as 1,000 girls and young women are forcibly converted each year, mostly from the country's Hindu minority.
They tend to be from very lower economic backgrounds. In most cases, they don't have the resources or the means to sort of fight back or to resist these attempts on their women, on their daughters, on their children.
Of Pakistan's 220 million people, Hindus account for about 2% of the population, or 4.5 million, according to government figures. Hindu community leaders say the number is more like 8 million. Most live in Sindh province, once known as the country's religious melting pot. Simran's family home is in the city of Mirpur Matelo, in Sindh's northern Gotki district. After accepting Islam at the Dargah Barchundi Sharif Seminary in nearby Derki, fresh converts are often taken to neighboring Punjab province, where the legal age for marriage is 16 years old instead of 18 in Sindh.
देखें इस्लाम कबूल करने वाले अल्लाह तबारक व तआला हिदायत देने वाला है.
Mian Muhammad Javed was the cleric behind Simran's conversion. He says she was 21 years old and denies she was pressured. He claims to have personally converted more than 100 people to Islam since 2015 and rejects any allegation his converts were threatened or abducted.
लेकिन ये सरासर झूठ है, फरेब है, धोखा है और इसके अलावा कोई हकीकत नहीं है. अगर इस तरह का कोई मामला होता तो वो कम से कम प्रूफ तो करते. तो मैं तो चैलेंज कर रहा हूँ.
One desperate Hindu father did wage a high-profile legal battle. Hari Lal alleged his 2 teenage daughters were kidnapped in March 2019 and forcibly converted. Authorities eventually agreed to investigate after he threatened to kill himself outside a police station, and the video went viral. Lal says that while he was away from home, armed men linked to the Dargah Barchundi Sharif Seminary kidnapped his 15-year-old daughter Ravina and 14-year-old Irina.
नहीं रुका ना, उधर हथियार थे उन के पास. हमारे क्या है, मेरी घरवाली इधर से चली गई, उससे वो हथियार दिखाए, वो तो उधर बैठ गई और क्या कर सके.
The sisters were married to Muslim men who allegedly claimed the girls were 18 and 19 years old. Ravina, who now goes by the Muslim name Asya, lives with her husband Safdar Ali and his first wife.
अब हम लोगों को तकलीफ तो कुछ भी नहीं है, हम लोग ऐसे रहते हैं बहनों की तरह. बस वहाँ पर आते थे ना, वहाँ पर आते थे, हम लोग मिले तो वहाँ पर राब्ता हुआ था, फ़ोन नंबर लिया था, फिर बात करते थे. फिर मैंने बोला मैं मुसलमान होना चाहती है. अच्छा ठीक है, तुम आओ, मैं आपको मुसलमान करूँ.
She says there were tensions at home with her parents and that she and her sister were drawn to the social and economic status that comes from joining the Muslim majority.
बस देखते थे वहाँ पर बहुत सारे मुसलमान बैठे हुए थे ना, वहाँ पर आते जाते थे, वहाँ से ख्वाहिश थी हम लोग मुसलमान होंगे.
In a case that made headlines across Pakistan, the Islamabad High Court ruled the two sisters were not forcibly converted and permitted them to live with their spouses. The judgment was hailed as a victory for Abdul Haq, who is known as Mia Mitta. The 82-year-old cleric wields political influence across northern Sindh province and runs the Dargah Barchundi Sharif Seminary at the heart of the controversial conversions.
अगर सरवर कायनात हुज़ूर पाक सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम कहते हैं कि ज़बरदस्त नहीं करना, तो हम कौन होते हैं? वो लोग इसीलिए कहते हैं कि वो लेते हैं कहीं से वो पैसे.
He provided no proof of that. Mia Mehta denies conversions are forced, but defended financing legal actions to prevent parents from contacting their newly converted children.
जो मुसलमान होता है, हम उसको तहफ़्फ़ुज़ देते हैं, रोज़गार का बंदोबस्त करते हैं, उसको रहाइश का बंदोबस्त करते हैं. अगर लड़का है तो उसके शादियां कराते हैं, अगर लड़की है तो उसको भी मतलब खावंद देते हैं.
And no matter what the circumstances of a conversion, there is no going back.
नहीं, सवाल ही मुसलमान हो गई ना, तलक टूट गया.
The costly court battle to get his daughters back exhausted Harilal's modest savings. He and his wife were left heartbroken.
हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते और रोते हैं, बस और क्या करते हैं. माँ रोती है, मैं रोता हूँ. रीना और रोहिना को बहुत याद करते हैं हम.
Ravina and Reena's case, however, did prompt an investigation by the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. In a 30-page report, it made several recommendations. It called for better birth records in rural areas, making the legal age 18 for religious conversions, and taking the process out of the hands of Muslim clerics.
It should be the provincial government authorizing the conversion. That process needs to be regulated, and whenever there is a hint of coercion, when there is this hint of force, then those matters need to be criminalized.
Lal Chand Mali is a Hindu member of Pakistan's parliament. He's on a government commission that is looking into the issue of forced conversions.
I'm insisting on two things. One, defining forced conversions. Number two, law on conversions.
But clerics have blocked several earlier legislative attempts to put age limits on conversions.
लेकिन जो मुल्क इस्लाम के नाम पे आज़ाद करवाया गया, उस मुल्क के अंदर इस तरह के कानून नहीं चलेंगे, क्योंकि उन्होंने कोशिश करके देखी. उन्होंने यक राय से सब लोगों ने ये नहीं सोचा कि हम अपना ईमान खराब कर रहे हैं.
Some Pakistani Hindus, however, say they have good reason to leave their faith. They convert to escape discrimination and the poverty that the vast majority of Hindus in Sindh province live in. Ajay Kumar became Muslim in exchange for a job at a fertilizer company.
कभी ऐसा कोई मुश्किल वक्त भी आ जाता है. जब मेरी पहली डिलीवरी हुई थी तो मेरे पास पैसा नहीं था.
Many Pakistani Hindus are born into a life of bonded labor. They inherit their parents' debts and are destined to work for landlords. But some Muslim clerics offer them a way out.
तुम कन्वर्ट हो जाओ, तुम्हारा कर्जा माफ.
Now I'd like to welcome the journalist who went to Pakistan to conduct this investigation, Daud Katak. He is a managing editor with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Pashto Language, Mashal Radio in Prague, Czech Republic. Before joining RFERL, Kathak worked as a staff reporter with Pakistan's English language newspapers, including the News International and Daily Times. He also worked as editor of Pajwak Afghan News in Kabul, Afghanistan from 2005 till 2008. In 2018, Kathak's video documentary, Vanishing History, won the Berlin Short Film Festival Award. The documentary highlights threats to the pre-Islamic Buddhist heritage and a brave effort by one man to protect it. So I'd like to start with a question that's been on my mind after I've seen this video. It's really well done and it really includes the challenges and from a variety of perspectives, and you really get to see the hesitation and fear on some of the girls' faces, as well as the confidence in the face of the perpetrators. So my first question to you is, what inspired you to take on this project in Pakistan?
This was really a challenge. Every day, we used to see reports appearing from some remote areas in Sindh province, particularly the region which is where the Hindu community is living, about the abductions of their girls. Mostly these issues are covered by the local media, and the local media is always under the influence of one party or another party. There are several kind of pressures, and since there are landlords in that area, there are religious groups. So all these factors together, I was interested to go deep into this very sensitive and very serious issue from the point of view of human rights and minority rights. And that's inspired me to take up this challenging job and go into those areas and dig deep into the stories myself and bring out the real information by speaking to the real sources and the real people, because when the local media is reporting, they are taking one side or another side, or they are leaving behind many questions. So to solve all the questions and to cover it without any fear or without any favor, I think that was the thing that inspired me to go after this story.
I absolutely agree. There are numerous challenges with the media in Pakistan and getting accurate information about the human rights violations that are taking place there. So it's so important that RFERL and other organizations are taking on the work of reporting on these human rights violations. I also wanted to hear from you, what surprised you once you were on the ground? Is there something that was unexpected that caught you off guard?
Well, there were many surprises in this story, but for the sake of brevity here, the most surprising was the behavior of the elected representatives from those areas. In privacy, they were openly speaking against the conversion hubs, or I would call these conversion factories, and the people who are responsible for this. But in open, they always adopt silence. Sometimes in the parliament they speak, but since this is a question of their support base, and the local population is also under the influence of those conversion hubs, they are very much in support of the conversion. So the elected representatives are not coming forward to create awareness about this very sensitive issue, which is the right of a minority and which is the plight of a minority. So they were not coming forward. Secondly, the parents are under serious pressure, and they openly criticize the local machinery, the police, the government, even their own Hindu elected representatives. There is a state of despair and hopelessness among those people. And thirdly, there is widespread poverty, which is also responsible for that. There is no schooling, no education out of poverty. So it's the issue appears for a while and then it disappears, and a certain issue or a certain girl who is forcefully converted and married, she is forgotten. She goes out of the media, she goes out of the mind of her family, and human rights is just ignored.
That is certainly surprising. I think one of the other things that's really important to acknowledge is how challenging doing this kind of investigative work is. And so I was hoping you could share a little bit about some of the challenges you and your team faced in conducting this investigation.
Well, there are many challenges, and there will be many challenges in such stories. But I would briefly say that there were three major challenges before me. One challenge was the intelligence agencies and the government machinery. Working with a camera crew and going after such sensitive stories, the local governments or the police or the intelligence agencies, they always chase you in such areas. So a reporter and his team, that must be very much careful, and they must have a well-prepared plan. Everything must be pre-planned. If someone just go and find the characters there, it becomes very difficult. So our strategy was there to go into an area and interview our characters and very quickly come out of those areas. This is just to secure ourselves, not to be exposed, not to carry out too much like cameras and everything, so not to expose too much. Secondly, the second challenge was from the conversion hubs. If at any point they come to know that this story is going to target them or this will go against them, so they will not let you do the story. They have a very strong following in those areas among the people and also in the government machineries, and they are very well connected people with the intelligence agency, so they would not let you do it. So you have to be very careful not to terrify them with your questions, and like you have to keep many things with you, but you have to also interview them in a way so that they may not feel like insecure or feel like we are going to like to target them. And the third is to find the real subjects, because parents are the affected families. They are also scared, and they are not scared because of the police, scared because of the intelligence agencies, scared because of the conversion hubs. They are very strong and powerful people, so they are not easily agreeing to talk to the media, especially to speak on camera. So we have to persuade them, we have to speak to them, and we did it. And but those were the real challenges in that area.
This work is very challenging, and I think that's what makes it so important to do. So it's really great that RFERL was able to do this kind of investigation. As a final question, I'd like to ask about any stories or any specific girls that stayed with you after you left Pakistan. If you could tell us a little bit about her family, and what happened to her.
Yes, there is one story of 17-year-old Simran Kumari. She is from Mirpur Matelo sub-district, and I visited her family just 20 days after she was allegedly abducted and forcefully converted and then married to one person in the area. And at a moment when I was interviewing the family, I literally ran into tears because her elder brother Sunny Kumar and her mother Janta and her younger brother, they were sitting together, and all of them were crying when I was asking them questions, and I literally stopped the interview. And the younger brother, he showed me Rakhi, and he said, look, only 5 days before she fastened me this Rakhi, and she was smiling and she was playing with us and she was very happy. So how can we say that she fled from our house and she was not happy? Then Sunny Kumar, the elder brother, told me, and that was really moving. He said, I'm so much desperate that I wanted to commit a suicide because no one is listening to me, the elected representatives, the police. Then the girl who disappeared from her house, Simran Kumari, and the same evening the family received a call that she is converted to Islam, and the same night she was married to a man in that area in Dargah, Barchundi Sharif. So that story was really a moving story. I tried to meet that girl, but I was not allowed, and she was not. I was told that she is not in the area, but the family was like running from one office to another, from one court to another court, and they were not getting any support. And then, as a follow up, when I tried to connect with the family after some 8-9 months, so I was told that she is now pregnant, and the family is still struggling to meet her. So Simran Kumari, who was named as Aisha, she was 17-year-old according to her family. But when I checked the log books of Mia Meta, whose real name is Mia Abdul Haq, and he is running one of the several hubs in that area, she was mentioned at 21 years old girl. So that story, that was really a moving story, but that was not a single story. Every story is like this. If you look at the story of Wrinkle Kumari from 2012, or if you look at the story of Reena and Ravina, the two sisters from 2018, and when her father was beating his chest and beating his face in front of a police station, when he was like the police refused to help him. So every story is moving. Every story is showing the helplessness of those people and that community in the area.
Thank you so much, Mr. Katak, for joining us today and for your incredible work bringing light to this issue. Now, to help us dive even deeper, I'd like to welcome Dr. Rubina Greenwood, a human rights and women rights activist who grew up in Sindh, Pakistan. She is chairwoman of World Sindhi Congress, a human rights education and advocacy organization for Sindh and Sindhis based in UK, US, and Canada. She is also the founder of International Sindhi Women's Organization in the UK and US, as well as one of the founding members of Sindhi Baloch Forum in the UK. She is a regular contributor at the UNHRC sessions and other international forums, which highlight the injustices against Sindhi Hindus in Pakistan. Welcome, Dr. Greenwood.
First, I would like to thank Hindu American Foundation for launching a dedicated campaign on stolen girls of Pakistan to raise awareness about the forced conversion of minority girls in Pakistan. A severe and heart-wrenching concern that has not much been talked about internationally. So really, thank you, HAF. Forced conversions happens when some sort of violence, physical, emotional, and/or psychological, is used to ensure a religious conversions. Thus, the victims of forced conversions are usually abducted, submitted to force, threats, and being coerced to choose between bearing the abuses and converting. Although all minority groups in Pakistan suffer persecution, Sindhi Hindus are the largest minority group to suffer forced conversions. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan indicates that the 20 or more Hindu girls are abducted and converted every month in Pakistan. The numbers may be higher, but official figures are difficult to obtain because the police often refuse to register the cases of forced conversion and work with religious institutions to cover or legitimize the conversions. Girls as young as 12 are taken and forcefully converted to Islam and married to mostly much older men, throwing them into the lives of perpetual sexual slavery, suffering, and permanently kept away from their families. Once the girls have been married off and converted, they are prohibited from contacting their families, leaving them even more vulnerable to the exploitation. To date, not a single perpetrator has been convicted because the state institutions prefer to take the side of religion rather than justice. Also, many Sindhis, which is majority Muslim, face prosecution from Pakistan. Therefore, targeting Sindhi Hindus is one key component to weaken the historical bond between Sindhi Muslims, and Sindhi Hindus. This divide and rule policy is in line with other hegemonic policies of Pakistan to dominate the people and resources of Sindh. Policy-wise, the government and at all levels pays only lip service to the protection of the religious minorities. But in reality, either it is directly involved in the discrimination or by turning a blind eye to the prosecution practices in society. The government's narrative and policies have been anti-Hindu, anti-India. Most textbooks contain anti-Hindu slogans. Moreover, the local police are often complicit in these crimes against Sindhi Hindus. Religious institutions play a central role in maintaining the status quo, avoiding creating a specific legal framework for forced conversions, and constraining the action of police officers and judges involved once a case is reported. The law requires that they must be registered at the local shrines by conducting free will conversions. Nevertheless, most religious institutions do not question the nature of the conversion, and information provided by the abductors, often false, is usually accepted. The certificates issued by these institutions become official document and given credibility by the law and can be used to excuse violations during the investigations and trials. To report a forced conversion, the victim's family or individual attends a police stations and registers a first information report, which is called FIR, of abduction. Statements compiled by police are not always factual, mainly when there is involvement of influential member of community. In some cases, police officers even refuse to register the FIR. In cases where police reports are filed, the court's practices has typically been to not decide custody matters in favor of the girl's family, even when the girls are 12 or 13 years old. Thus, it is clear that political allegiance or traditional sympathies ordinarily constrain police action as well. Throughout the whole process of pressing charges and testifying, the girls remain in the custody of the perpetrator of the forced conversion, which facilitates a testimony in favor of the perpetrator due to constant pressure and fear of a violent retaliation. Many families choose not to report cases against influential abusers due to the death threats. The last 2 decades, during which Pakistan saw a rise of madrasas and the increase in militant Islamic narratives, often supported by government and military, have manifested into the growing incidents of the violence against Sindhi Hindus. Few times, parliamentarian bills have been proposed and rejected to make this practice of kidnapping underage Sindhi Hindu girls, forcing them to convert to Islam and marry their abductors. For example, in 2015, the historic Sindh Minority Bill was passed in the Sindh Assembly, protecting some sort of forced conversions. However, this was not ratified by the governor assigned by the federal government of Pakistan. Then recently, on 13th of October, this year, 2021, the Parliamentary Commission on Forced Conversion did not accept the bill prepared by the Ministry of Human Rights, which was defined as a non-Islamic by the Ministry of Religious Affairs into Religious Harmony. The bill therefore lapses and will not be submitted to Parliament now. The bill provides the criminal offense for the forced conversions of underage non-Muslim girls in Pakistan. Hindu girls' forced conversion is not only a religious prosecution issue, but it is also a violence against women and violence against children. Unfortunately, this violence against girls is a systematic and organized crime where the Pakistani state, judiciary, parliamentarian, police, and religious clerks work as a one team. I urge the international community for their proactive and timely intervention to save our Sindhi Hindu daughters. I request that a resolution to be tabled against the forced conversion in the House, in conjunction with the sending a fact-finding delegation to Pakistan to investigate this heinous crime against girls, put pressure on Pakistan to follow through the laws, the bills which are already in the pipeline, and the State Department to spell out the prosecution of Sindhi Hindus in Pakistan by issuing statements on specific incidents. Sindhi Hindu and other minority girls' protection cannot be left as a matter of Pakistan's internal matter. This is an international matter and requires international intervention and international protection and rehabilitation of these girls. Thank you.
We've learned a lot today about the grave human rights violations that girls are facing in Pakistan. Hindu and other minority girls are regularly abducted, forced to convert, forced to marry somebody they don't know, sometimes that's much older than them, and they're raped and separated from their families, sometimes for the rest of their lives. This difficult situation is made possible by a government that supports these actions by judges, by local clerics, and so on. So what can you do to put an end to this horrible, horrible violence? Well, there's two things you can do right now. The first is to raise awareness about this issue, and doing that is easier than you might think. Go to the website savepakistansgirls.com. At this website, you'll find a plethora of information about the many, many violations of human rights these girls are facing, and see just how much information is available despite the inaction on this issue. Now, take this website and send it to all your friends and family. You could share it on WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, any social media, or email would be appropriate. Share this information so that your friends and family are made aware. Next, go to the right side of the page where it says urge your member of Congress to make a statement. I'll share a second link so you can easily go to that webpage. Here is an opportunity to take action on this issue. Ask your US senators and members of Congress to go ahead and condemn this violence. This is an important first step in making sure that US foreign relations with Pakistan are not just ones of continuously providing aid, but actually urging the government of Pakistan to protect its minorities. All you have to do is fill out the information with your name, address, and so on. Then an email will be sent to your elected officials and they'll be made aware of this issue. It only takes a second, but it's a powerful move when we all unite and speak together. So go ahead and take that action now. For those of you that are still taking action, please go ahead and complete filling out the form. But for everyone that's already done, your work isn't over. What we need to do now is make sure everyone in the Hindu community in the United States is taking action on this issue. So tomorrow, December 10th, the International Day of Human Rights, we're gonna share this on social media. Go ahead and share the Hindu American posts about this issue on all social media. And make sure that your friends, families, acquaintances, neighbors, and anyone you know is taking action, be they from the Hindu community or any other community around the United States, because this is an issue that affects us all. I'd now like to invite Dina Mariam, a member of the Hindu American Foundation's Advisory Committee, to say a few words. You may know her through her books, My Journey Through Time, The Untold Story of Sita, or more recently, When the Bright Moon Rises. She has done extensive interfaith work, including in the late 1990s, when she served as the vice chair of the Millennium World Peace Summit of Religious and Spiritual Leaders held at the United Nations in New York. She also convened a meeting of women religious and spiritual leaders in Geneva, and from that gathering, she founded the Global Peace Initiative of Women in 2002, an organization chaired by a multi-faith group of women and spiritual leaders. She has served on the board of the Harvard University Center for the Study of World Religions, the International Center for Religion and Diplomacy, the Interfaith Center of New York, and Seven Pillars. There's much more that we could say about Dina, but without further ado, I'd like to invite her to close out our program for today and say a few words about the importance of Hindu American advocacy for all Hindus around the world. Welcome, Dina.
Namaste. Thank you for joining us to hear about Pakistan's stolen girls. Many of us are not aware of the extent of the problem. Over 1,000 girls each year, young girls as young as 12, are still kidnapped in Pakistan and forced into unwilling marriages and forced to convert. Most of these girls, all these girls are either Hindu or Christian, and they're forced to accept Islam. This is a tremendous tragedy for the families and for the girls. And it's heartbreaking to think that in our modern age today, that women are still subjected to this. It's important for us as a Hindu community worldwide to support these women and to raise awareness about what is taking place so we can halt this practice. We must help save Pakistan's girls from being stolen, kidnapped, and forced into marriages and forced to convert, to leave the faith of their traditions and families. So thank you for coming to hear more about this important initiative. I hope you will check out the website, savepakistansgirls.com, and learn the details on how we can be helpful. And I also hope you can donate for this important campaign. We all need to be more aware of what's taking place in the places that don't get reported, the actions that don't get reported. But I'm very grateful that HAF has brought our attention to this situation so that we can pray for these girls and help in any way that we can. So as we close, let us send our thoughts to the many, many young girls in Pakistan who are going to be subjected to this fate until we can raise awareness globally and put pressure on Pakistan to take action to stop this. Thank you for joining us and thank you for coming.